I'm going to repeat a little bit. Okay, so we're talking about Patricia Kennedy. She was born on May 6, 1924 and died on September 17, 2006 at the age of 82. She attended and graduated from a college in Pennsylvania, and she was involved in directing and acting in many various plays and theatrical spectacles during her time. She was really into that. After she graduated, she went to work for NBC in New York, and she was introduced to a fellow by the name of Peter Lawford in 1949, who was a Hollywood actor. And in 1954, Patricia Kennedy married Peter Lawford. Now, he was a member of the famous Hollywood Rat Pack, which is on your ID sheet. Now, you guys are too young, but I bet your parents, I'm sure your grandparents would know who the Rat Pack was. Does anybody in here, by chance, know who the Rat Pack was? Yeah. Frank Sinatra was a member of the Rat Pack. Okay, very famous singer and actor. Dean Martin. You can see Dean Martin on all the old John Wayne movies. You know, Rio Bravo and all those. Dean Martin was a member of the Rat Pack. Joey Bishop. And ironically, African American, or Negro, as it was called at that time, Sammy Davis Jr. I am going to show you an incredible video. Have you ever heard of All in the Family with Archie Bunker? I have got the best video on Archie Bunker, the most racist man in history, meeting Sammy Davis Jr. And you'll love it. You will love it. Yeah.
Didn't you show us that last year?
I think I might have shown you guys, yeah. But Peter Lawford was a member of the Rat Pack, and he and Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra and Joey Bishop and Sammy Davis Jr. were these Hollywood actors, singers that performed a ton in Las Vegas. They were always in Las Vegas. And they had a reputation of partying and womanizing and all kinds of different things in the Las Vegas days. Where's Kelly? She's... Okay, so the Lawfords had 4 children, but they divorced in 1965. And the reason for the divorce was her husband's extracurricular activities with the Rat Pack. Okay, so she had a tough go marriage-wise. She married in 54, divorced in 65, and they had 4 children before the divorce. Huh? Which one? Peter Lawford. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wait, when did they get divorced?
They got divorced in 1965. So she was only married to him for like less than 11 years. Now this is a sketch of Peter Lawford signed here. And I think I have a signature of Patricia Lawford. Yeah, here's Patricia Lawford right here. Okay? So she had an interesting marriage. She never remarried, and she dedicated her life to arts and charity. She worked in all of her brothers, John's and Bobby's political campaigns, but she never remarried after her divorce to Peter Lawford in 1965. She probably had enough of men by that time in her life. She actually died, as I mentioned, in 2006 of pneumonia, and she's buried in Southampton, New York. Southampton, New York. So Patricia Kennedy dedicated her life to the arts and charity. She worked on her brother's political campaigns, and we'll talk about those. She again died in 2006 of pneumonia, and she's buried in Southampton, New York. Okay? Move on to child number 7 of Joseph Patrick Kennedy and Rose Fitzgerald Kennedy, and that's Robert Francis Kennedy. Quite a family. Robert Kennedy was born on November 20th, 1925. November 20th, 1925. And he died on June 6th, 1968. Born on November 20th, 1925, and died on June 6th, 1968. He was just 42 years old. Now, he was known as Robert Kennedy to very few people. His friends and family called him Bobby. Most people referred to him as Bobby. And his big job early in his life is he managed all of John Kennedy's political campaigns. So when John Kennedy ran for the House, Bobby Kennedy managed his campaign. When John Kennedy ran for the Senate, Bobby Kennedy managed that campaign. And when he ran for the presidency, Bobby Kennedy ran that campaign. He was a ruthless campaign manager. And you'll learn more about this when When John Kennedy was elected president in 1960, Bobby Kennedy was appointed as Attorney General of the United States, despite the fact that he had absolutely no political experience and no legal experience. He went to law school and that type of thing, and we'll tell you more about that later, but he didn't spend 1 second practicing law, and he became the Attorney General, which is the highest ranking lawyer in the country. His brother appointed him when he turned president. We'll talk about that later. After his brother was assassinated, he moved to New York and ran for Senator of New York successfully, and served as a Senator of New York after his brother's assassination. That was a little controversial because he wasn't a New Yorker, was he? Where did he grow up? Where did the Kennedy family grow up? Massachusetts. So what he did is he pulled a Hillary Clinton and he moved to another state, New York, and got residency, and then was popular enough that he was elected senator without much trouble. It was a little controversial though. Well, in 1968, because of Vietnam and some disorder in the United States, he announced that he would run for president of the United States. So he threw his name in the election of 1968. He campaigned vigorously and was doing quite well in the primaries. Was doing quite well, trying to gain the Democratic nomination. Now, you don't really have to write this down, but Lyndon Johnson was a sitting president, and very seldom does a sitting president ever face a challenge, you know, for the nomination of their party. Never happens. Well, because of Vietnam and some things that were going on, Eugene McCarthy challenged the president for the nomination, and when Bobby Kennedy saw how well McCarthy was doing, he threw in and tried to get the Democratic nomination. And finally, Lyndon Johnson just refuses to run for another term, and the door's wide open for Kennedy. So he's campaigning all over, and he's in Los Angeles, California, and he wins a big primary election in Los Angeles, California. And as he gives his speech afterwards, he leaves and walks through a kitchen and is assassinated by Sirhan Sirhan, and we have another Kennedy tragedy. You don't have to write all that down, we'll get to it. But he was assassinated while campaigning in Los Angeles, California for the presidency. And he is buried in Arlington National Cemetery, right maybe 30 yards from his brother, and you'll get an opportunity to see that when you go to D.C. So again, Robert Kennedy served as his brother's campaign manager. He then ran for the Senate after being Attorney General during his brother's presidency, and he actually served a little time for Lyndon Johnson, but didn't like Lyndon Johnson, so he moved to New York, became a senator there, decided to run for the presidency, and was assassinated while running for president. Okay? And we'll talk way more about Robert Kennedy, so we're not trying to shortchange him. Okay? We'll move on to the 8th sibling, Jean Ann Kennedy. Jean Ann Kennedy. Jean Ann Kennedy was born on February 20th, 1928. Was born on February 20th, 1928. And you know what? Jean Ann Kennedy is still alive today. The only Kennedy sibling still living. Still alive today. You can figure out how old she is. 38, 48, 58, 68, 78, 88, 98, 2008. She'll be 90 in 2018. So, still living today. She went to college and got a major in English. After she went through her formative years, she went to college in New York, majored in English. Now, do you remember when Joseph Kennedy, her older brother, was killed in the World War II mission? And I told you that they named a destroyer after him, the USS Joseph Patrick Kennedy Jr. She was the sibling that was chosen to christen the ship. In other words, you take a bottle of champagne and break it over the bow, and then the ship goes out to sea. That's kind of a tradition whenever you put a new ship on the sea. It was Jean Ann that was given the privilege to christen the USS Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. when it went out to sail for the first time. In 1956, she married a fellow by the name of Stephen Smith. And you know what Stephen Smith's job his whole life before his death in 1990 was after he married Jean Ann Kennedy? You know what his job was from that point on until 1990? He managed all of the Kennedy family charities. Kennedys gave a lot of money to charity, and Stephen Smith was the guy that managed those, and decided, put those together, and contributed to all the different charities that the Kennedy family contributed to. So In 1956, Jean Ann Kennedy married Stephen Smith, who until his death in 1990 managed the Kennedy Family Charities. Since 1964, she's been a member of the Board of Trustees of the Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. Foundation. So she's really working to preserve the legacy of her older brother. I'll repeat that. So since 1964, she has been a member of the Board of Trustees of the Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. Foundation. Now, what's a foundation? A lot of professional football players and athletes have foundations in their name. What do foundations do? Anybody know? What's that, Kelly?
They supply the association.
They supply what?
The association that they're like.
But what do they do? What does the foundation normally do? They raise money and give it away. And they give it away to certain things. Well, the Joseph P. Kennedy Foundation promoted the awareness of mental retardation and gave money to those endeavors. So again, who is that foundation helping celebrate? Rosemary. Okay, so the Joseph P. Kennedy Foundation, which Jean Ann Kennedy Smith stayed on the board since 1964, promoted advocacy or support in the field of mental retardation. Now, she also served a little in politics. This was interesting. In 1993, she was named U.S. Ambassador to Ireland. She was named U.S. Ambassador to Ireland. Which president named her that position? 1993. Democrat, hardcore Democrat president. Politically, one of the greatest. Morally, no comment. Bill Clinton. Yeah, President Clinton. President Clinton appointed Jean Ann Kennedy U.S. Ambassador to Ireland in 1993. And she served that position for a period of time. She's still living. If my math is correct, how old is she going to be here? Pretty quick. In February of 2016, how old is she going to be? 87? 88, right? Okay, lives in New York, and will turn 88 in February. Okay, and then we'll move on to the final, and maybe the most important of all of the Kennedy siblings. Okay, last but probably the most important, although he didn't avoid trouble himself, and that would be Edward Moore Kennedy. Edward Moore Kennedy. What was he better known as? Anybody know? Ted Kennedy. Okay, nobody called him Edward Moore. He was born on February 22nd, 1932. Born on February 22nd, 1932. February 22nd, 1932, and he died on August 25th, 2009. Died on August 25th, 2009. He was 77 years old. He was born on February 22nd, 1932, and he died on August 25th, 2009. He also went to Harvard University, and he graduated from there in 1956. So Ted Kennedy attended Harvard University, graduating in 1956. He majored in government there. He also went to law school at the University of Virginia. And he served in both houses of Congress, which means what, Sadria? He served more than 1 minute.
University of what?
University of Virginia. So if he served in both houses of Congress, what positions did he hold? So he's a member of the House of Representatives and Senate. Now, this is pretty important, whether you're Democrat, Republican, whatever. Ted Kennedy served in the United States Senate, representing Massachusetts, for nearly 53 years, from 1956 to 2009. He served in the United States Senate for nearly 53 years of his life, from 1956 to 2009. He was elected a record 9 times to the Senate. 9 times. You can piss a lot of people off in 9 terms, folks. How long is a senatorial term? How many years? 6. So he was elected 9 times. 9 times. Could you make some enemies in 9 elections? Unbelievable. He was the 3rd longest serving member of the Senate in American history. He served longer in the Senate than, there are only 2 other people that served longer than he did. Anybody know who the longest serving senator in the history of our country is? Or was? Right here, guy right here. Strom Thurmond. Served longer than, he was in the Senate in his 90s. Strom Thurmond. But Edward Kennedy was 3rd longest. I'm going to tell you something. And I'm not getting into politics here. Ted Kennedy, despite, and you're going to hear some dumb things he did, because he did some dumb things, okay? Alcohol was a big part of it. He liked to womanize a little bit. Whatever, personal life. He might have been the greatest politician this country's ever had. He was an incredible politician. Very wealthy man. Who did he always support? The underprivileged. Always. Always fought for the underprivileged. Now I'm going to read a quote from President Obama, and he said this after Kennedy's death. I just want you to listen to it. Don't have any political biases on President Obama or Democrats or Republicans. I just want you to listen. This is what he said about Ted Kennedy when he died. He said, "For 5 decades, virtually every major piece of legislation to advance the civil rights, health, and economic well-being of the American people bore his name and resulted from his efforts. He fought for and won so many great battles on voting rights, education, immigration reform, the minimum wage, national service, the nation's first major legislation to combat AIDS, and equality for minorities, women, the disabled, and gay Americans. He called health care the cause of my life and succeeded in bringing quality and affordable health care for countless Americans, including children, seniors, and Americans with disabilities." No question the man did more to help this country in those endeavors than anyone. He just did. He didn't have to. He had it made. He was the conscience of the Democratic Party, and he was the master of compromise, better than Bill Clinton, at walking across the aisle and working with Republicans. And Bill Clinton, whether you like him or not, was maybe the greatest president that could walk across the aisle and get things done. But Ted Kennedy was even better. He just never became president because of some bad choices that he made. Okay? He was commonly known as the Lion of the Senate. The Lion of the Senate. Very well respected. And he died, as I mentioned, in 2009 from a brain tumor. Now, I have been to Washington, D.C. 17 times. This will be my 18th. And I very seldom see anything new. I had not been there in 5 years prior to when I took Phoenix, Montoya, and Carly Cottrell and that crew. And from the time I had been there the last and the time that I had been there that year, Ted Kennedy had passed away, and he's buried right next to his brother Robert in Arlington. And you'll get a chance to see that as well. But he was an incredible ambassador as a senator. Despite many, many faults that he had in his personal life, he was a very, very, very good senator. Okay, any questions on the siblings, 9 siblings of the Kennedy family? Okay, we're going to move on to a profile on John F. Kennedy. We won't get even close through this today, but we'll get a good start on it and kind of give you some information about President Kennedy that you may or may not know. Interesting fellow. Okay, so profile on John Fitzgerald Kennedy. So you know all the siblings now and what they're all about, right? Okay. Okay, John Fitzgerald Kennedy was actually born in Brookline, Massachusetts, and I mentioned that before. He was born in Brookline, Massachusetts on May 29, 1917. So John F. Kennedy was born in Brookline, Massachusetts on May 29, 1917. He was a very unhealthy person, and it started as a child. He was very often ill as a child, very often ill. He was actually born with one leg shorter than the other. Okay, he was often ill as a child. He was born with one leg shorter than the other. Anybody go to the chiropractor around here? Do you ever go to the chiropractor because you have one leg shorter than the other? Well, I wasn't born with one leg shorter than the other, but I've got hip issues now because I'm old and I'm paying for all the bad things I did. So my pelvis will get out of place. And what it does is it makes one leg longer than the other. And what happens when that happens to your body? What starts hurting like you can't believe it? Your back. So I go to the chiropractor, and every time I go in, he turns me over and pops my pelvis back in so my legs are the same size. So he was born with one leg shorter than the other, and it led to back pain throughout his entire life. So he suffered from back pain throughout his entire life. And he was so unlucky he got scarlet fever at the age of 3. So this guy was not a healthy individual from birth. And I'll tell you more about that as we go on. So Kennedy was often ill as a child. He was born with one leg shorter than the other, which led to back pain that he suffered throughout his entire life. He also had scarlet fever at the age of 3. Well, he attended elementary schools in both Massachusetts and New York. And then when he was ready to go to high school, he was sent to Choate Academy, which is on your ID sheet. And Choate Academy was a private school in Connecticut because his father moved a bit. So he attended elementary schools in both Massachusetts and New York. And then when he got to be 14 years old and headed for high school, so to speak, he went to a private high school in Connecticut called Choate Academy. Choate Academy. Now, he was not an angel. He was once expelled for mischievous behavior, but they shortly afterwards reinstated him. I wonder why that happened. I'll bet Papa went up there and opened up his wallet a little bit. I don't know. But good. So he was actually expelled for mischievous behavior when he was at Choate Academy, but he was reinstated shortly afterwards for reasons